Hello, in this video I will discuss the degrees of comparison. There are basically two parts of speech in the English language which require this discussion. Naturally, these are adjectives and adverbs, and it is quite logical to start with adjectives. I assume that there are people who will not understand some terms. I will pronounce in English, for which reason I will translate these terms into Russian. So, there are two main types of comparing adjectives, namely the comparative degree, сравнительная степень, and the superlative degree, превосходная степень. As it can be seen from the names, when the degree is comparative, we compare one characteristics to another characteristics and assume that a certain characteristics is more important, more vivid, more significant, or less significant, less important than the one it is compared with. And when we speak about the superlative degree, we assume that the characteristics mentioned is something unsurpassed, something supreme, something which has reached the highest level of its importance, development, or whatever. So going into more details, I will start from the basics. There are two ways of forming a comparative degree and a superlative degree. They are synthetical and analytical. And by the synthetical method, I assume suffixes which can be added to an adjective, and the analytical way assumes that there are special additional words that should be used to make a comparison where appropriate. So when we think about the degrees of comparison, we should pay attention to the number of syllables in a word. Of course, we will start the discussion with one-syllable words. Односложные слова. In one-syllable words, the synthetical way of making comparison should be used. This means that when we want to compare, we add the suffix er to an adjective, and when we use the superlative degree, we add the suffix est to the adjective. For example, if we have the adjective small, we should say smaller to indicate that the quantity is less than small. And if we want to make a superlative degree, we add an est, which make it the smallest, showing that there is nothing smaller than that. And similarly, we form all other constructions when we have a one-syllable word. Similarly to small, smaller, or smallest, we can say great, greater, greatest, or fast, faster, fastest, and the like. The only thing to remember here is that if we have a closed syllable, закрытый слог, and as a result of adding er or est, this syllable opens, слог открывается. This is something inappropriate, and we are supposed to close the syllable, and this is done by doubling the final consonant, удвоение, последний согласный. Like in big, we have the big, it's a closed syllable, and if we add er, the syllable will open, and it should be not big, but bigger, which is not correct. And for this reason, we should double this G, we should write bi, double G, er, which will make it bigger. So there is double G, so the syllable is closed, and we have to read bigger, not differently. Or, for example, fat, fatter. Fat is a closed syllable, but the letter preceding T is A, it's a vowel, so if we add ER, we open the syllable, for which reason we need to close it. So we make it closed by doubling the T. F-A-T-T-E-R, fatter, and naturally the fattest. Perhaps you have noticed that when I use the superlative degree, I add the definite article in front of it. The biggest, the fattest, the smallest, the fastest, the largest. Usually when we use the superlative degree, we use the definite article in front of an adjective. For example, this car is the fastest, or this plane is the largest, or this country is the smallest, and the like. In fact, it is possible to use an indefinite article in front of an adjective in a superlative degree, which will mean that the quality expressed by this adjective is not superior, but is included in a group of superior characteristics. For example, if we say this plane is the biggest, it means that there are absolutely no planes bigger than this one. But if we say it's a biggest plane, it means it is one of the biggest planes. Right, that's it. But let us return to our rules of making comparisons. We have already discussed that in case of one-syllable words, we use ER and EST to make a comparison. Now we will skip two-syllable words and we will go on to three or more syllable words, because it will be easier to understand the structure in this order. So if we have three-syllable words, four-syllable words, or more syllable words, we use the analytical method. We add more or most to the adjective to make a comparison. So if it is a comparative degree, well, let's take the word fascinating. If we make a comparative degree, we should say more fascinating. And if we want to make a superlative degree, we say the most fascinating. And similarly, all other words of this kind: beautiful, more beautiful, the most beautiful, important, more important, the most important. Now, the last point to discuss here in this respect is the following: two-syllable words. So what do we do with two-syllable words? We should keep in mind that some two-syllable words require the synthetical means of making a comparison, that is ER or EST. Some need the analytical form, more, most, and some can take both. When you reach an advanced level of English language proficiency, you may learn all details, but for my students who want to avoid making mistakes, I usually explain it in the following manner. You should remember 3 endings. If an adjective which has 2 syllables ends in y, er, ow, we use the synthetical means of forming the comparison. That is, we add er or est. For example, tasty, tastier, the tastiest. And by the way, here y is replaced with I. T-A-S-T-I-E-R or est. Nasty, nastier, the nastiest. And the like. The same structure is used with the word clever, which ends in er. So it will make cleverer, the cleverest. And the same structure is used with the ending ow, like narrow, narrower, the narrowest. There are also some other adjectives which can take the synthetical means of comparison, and at the same time can take the analytical means. For instance, common. You can say commoner, the commonest, or more common, the most common. Both are correct, but again, if we do not go into such precise details, it is enough to memorize the 3 endings y, er, est, and in all other cases we will not be wrong if we use more, most. So this is my recommendation to those who have just begun dealing with the degrees of comparison and want to avoid mistakes at all costs. Now, what is to be said about the degrees of comparison besides what I have just said is that adverbs also require these degrees, and when we talk about adverbs, we basically use the analytical method of making a comparison. Well, as you know, adverbs usually end in ly, like friendly, frequently, usually, and the like. And if we want to make a degree of comparison, we add more and most in front of them, like more interestingly, the most interestingly, more beautifully, the most beautifully, more commonly, the most commonly, and the like. In case of these adverbs, there is no need to count the number of syllables. Нет необходимости считать количество слогов. No matter how many syllables there are, we add more or most. But there are some exceptions, and the most obvious exception is the adverb fast. There is an adjective fast, быстрый, and there is an adverb fast, быстрый. We cannot say fastly. There is no such word as fastly in the English language. So we can say he is fast. In this case, fast is an adjective, and we can say he runs fast, in which case fast is an adverb. And in this very case, we use the synthetical means of forming a comparison. Faster, the fastest. But this is an exception. The general rule is the one with more, most. And of course, if we talk about vocabulary, we should be able to distinguish between different forms of adverbs and adjectives. For example, there is an adjective hard, which means сложный, and there is a word hardly, which can be mistakenly understood to be an adverb from the adjective hard, but that's not true. Hardly means едва, not тяжело. So hard, тяжелый, hardly, едва. You should keep these nuances in mind if you want to avoid mistakes. So these are the basic things you are supposed to know about the degrees of comparison. What's left is to drill this theory in practice, which will be the topic of my next video or of my personal communication with you. Good luck.